Guys, welcome to another episode of Metal Mastermind. Co-founder and your co-host, me, Jason Stallworth, and also co-founder of Metal Mastermind and co-host the great
Ken Candelas. Good
dude.
morning. How are you,
Good
man?
morning. I'm great. We appreciate you guys. I know we say that all the time. I hope you don't get tired of hearing it, but we dearly appreciate all of you listening and being a part of Metal Mastermind. You are so important to us. Thank you for being a part of this awesome metal musician community that you have built. We didn't build this. You guys built it, right? We're all part of this together. But Ken and I, we always have discussions, just him and I. Sometimes Ken, because they get a little we share what we're going through with the business and some personal challenges, which all these revolve around, like, Ken, our home lives are good. We have zero issues in that department, but our a lot of our frustrations, which is what we're going to be talking about today, frustrations and how to handle it, and a lot of stuff that you just feel like your back's against the wall and things just aren't moving in the direction that you want. But Ken and I, building a business and working on albums and everything that goes with that, making a living in the arts. We had this pretty lengthy discussion, dude, probably at least 30 minutes, man. And we should have filmed that for like an inside exclusive or something. But just really, really good heartfelt conversation, man. But frustrations, Ken, I'll let you kick it off with just kind of how you handle it. And
When we work on our music, I think one of the biggest things about working on your music to get it to the other side of it being released, especially if you care deeply about it, is how long you realize the process takes. You come through, and if you've never released an album before, it's just to put it in especially as an indie musician, it takes a lot of effort, especially if you want it to be of a high production. These sorts of things take time, and if you're doing them on your own, you just have to be aware and prepared that you will, spend a significant amount of time. One of the things that I guess, if we're to go back in history a little bit, when we had, record labels just constantly funding artists, literally living out of a studio for months on end, where they were able to just create and capture those moments. We don't really have that kind of style of recording anymore, or at least it's not a common thing. Now it's a much more rare thing. You have to have your own funding, or if you're still with a label, they don't even, give as much of an advance to artists anymore. So you have to be more creative with your time. And when you are sitting there and you're creating your song, creating the song is one thing. Jason and I, we're involved in my own music, and Jason played guitars for me back in like 2019, and it's 2023 now. And it's gone through a lot of its own hurdles, my own personal issues with my record. That's just life, making you take detours. But we just had this small discussion on, am I holding myself back from releasing this? And quite honest, I think it's not necessarily that I'm holding myself back, but that what I'm building with my own music is more than just an album. It's a story, and there's 27 pieces of artwork that goes along with it. And, it's just this big conglomerate of, creativity. So struggled and been frustrated very much so with my own journey, because this thing takes a long time to create. Frustration, yes, very, very true. How do I deal with it? I remember why I do what I do. I'm an educator, I'm a teacher, and whenever I show my students my work, it's still in progress, but them knowing me personally gets them a little bit of access to it. They're very inspired by it, and they can't wait to hear it. So that certainly helps. having the feedback from my students, my peers, and people who have been on board, and they're totally gung-ho about it. That all helps. I think having a support that you can rely on is imperative. If you are truly alone, it becomes very hard to move past some of that mental blockage. I think, if you have somebody that you can lean on, whether that's a significant other, it's a business partner, or it's a really, really good friend, because we're human. We need to deflate, as much as we need to also inflate our inspiration. We also need to deflate certain things in life and decompress and recenter ourselves and come back to it and be stronger than we were before. It's not always easy getting back on that horse, because when you fall, you hurt your back. Okay, because when you do, you're more determined about it. It takes more to get back on that horse the second time than it was the first time. So you getting back on that is a telltale sign that you'll be fine. You just got to keep going. And I truly believe in that.
We've shared kind of the same struggle. I've been working on an album as well, and I mentioned this on my channel and several podcasts. But long story short, about 2.5 years ago, the album was pretty close to being done. I even had the drums recorded for it. Cameron Fleury out of Canada, he recorded the drum tracks for it, and I had the rhythms down, had some of the leads down. But then I put everything on hold because Ken, you and I wanted to really pursue Metal Mastermind, and this was a brand new venture. So I'm like, well, chasing two large rabbits, you probably won't catch either one. So I'm like, let me put that to the side, because right now Metal Mastermind is more important that we get this off the ground. You
Right.
and I had a vision for it. So we've got to take this opportunity and run with it, which we did, which I'm proud of that decision. I would never take that back for anything. I love what we're doing. Had we not started it, we wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you guys. But revisiting that album 2 years later, it's like, oh, I don't like certain things. So I have changed many, many things on the album. There were times where I wanted to scratch it. I'm like, maybe I'll just work on another album and just scratch this whole thing, which I don't think that would be a good decision either. So anyway, I'm at the tail end of it here. Sometimes, Ken, and you and I both talked about this earlier, and to everyone, a lot of times our frustration can come in our ability. And this is something we talk quite a bit about, in Metal Mastermind. And it's like, you're an accomplished musician, Ken. You're an accomplished composer. I've been playing guitar and writing music since 1989. I've been playing live, for just about that long. So, but even with all that, you can have those moments where you just lack confidence in yourself and your abilities. And it's like, okay, is this really good enough?
Yeah.
And out there nowadays, everybody's a critic. I mean, I guess everybody's always been a critic, but you can base decisions off what you think others will think. And we've talked about this before as well. And I guess what I encourage you guys not to do is just that. Don't worry about what others think, but don't worry about what you think others may think. A lot of that's just kind of conjured up in our own heads, right? There's a lot of negativity around there. There's a lot of opinions floating around. But even the most confident people, actors alike, they can lack confidence at times. And that's something I think we all can struggle with from time to time.
Totally. Confidence is a huge factor in all of that. The most successful people are usually the most confident too.
Yeah, they are.
So building up confidence is a huge part of it. And, you kind of have to grind through a bit. You don't start off with just, all this confidence. Sometimes, even myself or somebody can feel like this imposter syndrome that, are we doing the right thing? Are we giving the value that we're supposed to give? Do
Big
people, walk away thinking, oh, I can follow this guy? I mean, as an educator, I struggle with that for a while because, just a little backstory here, like 2019 was also when I started working as a professor, a year before, the pandemic. And all of this was it kind of fell onto my lap. I didn't intend to go to my job that I have now as wanting to be a professor. I was actually going for an interview to be a technician, to just, you know, run the studios and things when they went down and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
my boss then had looked at my resume and said, "Hey, this guy looks like he could be actually a decent teacher." And you know, they asked me whether I'd be interested, and I said, I guess. And you know,
Not
it
really
went
sure
really
about that, but
well. And then I got the job. But even when I got the job, I didn't start off with like, hey, here's a handbook, here's how you start teaching. You know, it's like, because I wasn't involved in teaching at all. This straight, like, I actually told sometimes my teachers before, I would say, no, I don't want to teach. Like, I want to just be the engineer, I want to do that. And then coming here, I was just like, okay, out. And I was plopped into the middle of a semester. I wasn't even plopped in the beginning of one. And they're like, okay, you're just going to pick up where this guy left off. I was like, what? Talk about being old. So, but it was a sink or swim moment, you know, and I swam, and it just kind of naturally evolved over time as that I took on, and became one with being a teacher. I say teaching chose me. It wasn't me that chose teaching. And that confidence over time, it became something that I embodied through the, in some ways, the validation of my students. You know, when students had told me this was something that they benefited from, that certainly helped. Or my employers, they told me that it benefited the school. That certainly helped. And then, of course, there was my own foundation, you know, to say that, yeah, you know, even though I don't know necessarily what this topic is about today, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do a little bit of homework, and I'm going to make a presentation about it to make, when I do talk about it, I can convey at least something that can get across to the student. And that was huge.
You just nailed something very important, Ken, and something you and I learned from Leah McHenry in our time with the Savvy Musician Academy is we'll figure it out. You know, you're always going to figure it out. If you want to figure it out, you'll find a way, man. You will find a way to do it.
You will.
It's a valuable lesson we learn. Is as simple as that is, you know. Very powerful. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, when I left my corporate job, man, I didn't have the income that income was not replaced when I left my corporate job 3.5 years ago. I took a voluntary layoff, and I got a small severance package, a little bit of funds that I had in an investment account, and I'm like, all right, well, this will hold us over to a year, for about a year, and I'm like, well, I'll have to figure out how this is going to work, you know, and I eventually did, and not to say it hasn't been a there are always uncertainties when you work for yourself, or when you jump out there and do something that is seemingly outside of the norm. But again, you just figure it out. Sometimes I believe that when your back's against the wall in certain things, man, because it's like, okay, I have to figure out a way. I don't want to go back to what I was doing. There's nothing wrong with what I was doing. I mean, I met some great people there. Actually, I saw a dude that I worked with. I hadn't seen him in years there in the gym this morning. So, you know, I met a lot of great people. I learned a lot of great things. So I certainly don't want to say anything negative about my corporate gig. It was great. If I didn't have this drive to do what I do now, I'd probably still be there. You know, it was a great position that I had, and I worked with a lot of great people. But I knew that there was something else that I wanted to do with my life, and this was it. I just didn't know how I would make it as a full-time musician. I'm like, hey, you know, Ken, we figured out this platform here, Metal Mastermind, and some other things. And, you know, here we are, dude. We're in some people's eyes, we're living the dream. And I'm very grateful for that. Even with the struggles, you know, and we probably won't get into that part on the podcast here. But you and I talked about some of the struggles. There's some financial struggles that come with running your own platform. You know, there are some uncertainties that come. There are good times. There are a lot of peaks and valleys, but you just have to know that no matter what, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, you have made a great point there. I also really firmly believe that growth is equivalent to recognizing resistance. And so when you come to a point where there's resistance, your movement forward, it's all about deliberating and deciphering what is the resistance that's in the way and how to, get around. I actually received a compliment from a good friend of mine who said, the thing about you is you always seem to, be like a cat landing on its 2 feet. Yeah. And I said, I appreciate that. I don't always know how things are going to work out, but that does warm my heart. You have to be able to adapt and still land on your 2 feet, and you don't know what you take a risk here, that could mean a cascading effect this way or that way, and sometimes it's okay. Sometimes you just have to take a calculated risk and say, this is what I'm going to do. And I will say this, ever since starting Metal Mastermind, things have been much easier for me to work around. That is an absolute fact. The challenges that come across with making a platform like this, having to build the website, having to build the intricate, payment system, having to build the marketing, the blogging, the YouTube video, Facebook ads, all this stuff that you don't really think about when you start getting into business.
We've done so much, man.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into doing an online business, and you realize, you're like, oh my God, this is like a behemoth. We built an entire course platform on top of that. So
we didn't outsource any of this either. Ken and I built this whole thing ourselves. So
yeah,
not to say you shouldn't outsource things. I believe in getting proper help, but from the ground up, when you're just starting, it's like you kind of take when we didn't have any funding or anything like that. We just like, hey, let's do this. So we just kind of did it, and boom.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good and bad to that. When it's time to hire somebody. The bad news is that it takes a long time, because in the beginning you're like, why do I need to hire this guy? I can do it myself. So you need a lot more time, just doing things yourself, and that can be very overwhelming. And oh my gosh, the amount of emails is like how many emails do we have to? It's kind of insane, man. So it's a process, though. That's what we're saying. And when you decide that you're going to build something that you want to create as your legacy, whether that's your music or it's building a flower shop, who knows? It's all about making sure that you're staying true to what it is that you stand for. If you don't really have your heart in it, it's infinitely more challenging. And you have to always remain true to that. You have to always say, even though, despite the fact that you might be frustrated, is this still your life's mission? And if you still say yes, then yeah, okay, then this is just a hump in the road, and you'll get through it. But yeah, if you don't feel that way, then you need to really think about the resistance that you have in your life and why that's the case.
I love that resistance, man. I think I sent you a little video on the way home from the gym this morning. Being underweight, you guys know I love weight training. That's something that's been a staple in my life from an early age, something I'll do for the rest of my life, just as much as I'll play music. And no, I'm competing and all that stuff or whatever. It's just something I love to do. But I was telling Ken, I'm like, think about, you've got this weight on your chest. Let's say it's the bench press, for example. And yeah, we want to be, all in, like we just push through it. But sometimes the weight is actually too heavy and it is not moving and it is crushing you. So you have to know when to make the appropriate move and pivot And like you said, Ken, earlier, adapt to the changes, pivot accordingly. I'm like, you might sometimes need to slide out from under that weight, okay, and then go to something else that's going to build that. Sometimes it's not about just pushing through, because sometimes we can push towards something and it's just not budging. And then we'll spend a lot of time and energy trying to push something that maybe it wasn't meant to be pushed at all. Now, that thing you're pushing is not your overall vision, your passion, your dream is above all that. Your vision for your life is above all of that. It's above the weight that you're trying to push in your life right now, right? Some of you may be struggling with a certain thing and you're just trying to push and push and push. Not in every situation, but maybe the answer isn't necessarily pushing through that particular weight, but pivoting and finding a way around that that's going to kind of make you flow. Like I love what Bruce Lee said. He's like, flow like water. So maybe there's another crevice in there that you need to be exploring to get through or get around so that you can pursue that vision that you have. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, yeah. Not forcing things to work. It's like, it's another good analogy is you ever try like unscrewing something and you realize, oh man, this is really tough. So let me just wrench it and like really try forcing it out. And then all of a sudden it breaks the thing that just you were actually working with. And you're like, ah, dang it. Well, that's exactly the idea, and if you keep forcing things, you're eventually just going to strip the screw.
So we talked about this earlier. We even talked about there's a fine balance, because I can be a workaholic. Coming from the corporate background, it's like always someone creating more work to do, and there's always stuff, right? But it's not necessarily things that are moving the needle forward. This is just kind of like busy work. It's not really doing anything, And I've been the king of just staying busy, of doing more and doing more and doing more. Can run on the treadmill really, really fast and just put all the effort into that and not go anywhere. So it goes back to that balance of do put in the work. Yes, you need to put in the work. You need to work hard work. I mean, that would get you so far, right? You need to work diligently and work smart and work on doing the appropriate thing to get you to that next level. Sometimes that might be a little difficult. Sometimes it might not. There's a balance between putting in the time and putting in the work and the energy, a balance between that. And also, Ken, you and I talked about being the type of person, having the type of mindset that attracts great things. If you marry those two concepts together, I believe you're unstoppable.
Yeah. And if you can remove as much distraction as possible, that would be ideal. I have been turning off notifications from all of my apps, all of the social media apps, all of this, all of that. Even when you don't necessarily respond to any of that, your eyes wander, they look at the phone, they look that there's a notification, your screen turns on, and just a second of time that is away from what you should be doing. And it could very much like lose your train of thought. When I started doing that, I started noticing that I was a lot less stressed about certain things. And that I got just a little bit more done. Sometimes what you can do is set a timer for yourself. Let's say once every 30 minutes. And at 30 minutes, a 2-minute break, a 5-minute break, whatever, so that you can just alleviate yourself from just constantly getting too swallowed in your work and just giving yourself that mental break. These are all just tips and tricks. You find what works for you. But eliminating distractions is super, super helpful. And when you do something like turning off your notifications, I mean, it's an amazing thing how much you actually realize, oh my God, like I just spent time just like focusing on stuff that didn't matter. Like you were talking about the busy work, and it's like, okay, I have to like recall my time and put this where I really care about. And that's so pivotal, and it changed quite a bit of my focus. I've been really busy lately with just my job, but honestly, when I do get to work, man. It does do a good deed. And again, it is my project is something that takes so long to do. because of all the detail that's required in it. But if I wasn't so, determined and focused to do it, it wouldn't see the light of day. And I know it will. I can be frustrated all I want that it's not out in the world now. You just got to take the time that it's going to take. It will happen when it was meant to happen. Like you said too, not forcing it. Sometimes these things, they will come to fruition when they come to fruition. It's not like, oh, I got to get and catch the bus, in 10 minutes and that's my deadline. It's not like that. It's a long-term thing. If you're creating something from scratch and this is the first time anybody will hear it, give it the love that it needs, the TLC. Don't stress about that too much. It's okay to feel a certain type of way of where you are in the project, but you just need to let it breathe and let it do its thing. Do it right first, then when you get the Netflix deal.
Well, it's like I mentioned, it's like the question I asked earlier, and Ken, correct me if you feel differently about this, man. But I mean, would you say there's a balance between, what you're talking about, but at the same time, don't allow that to be an excuse to not move forward and not work on things. Sometimes
Yes.
you can say, well, it's just and I've done this before. This is why I'm sharing it. It's like I won't work as much as I need to on that project, and I'll just say, oh, it's just taking time. It's a big project. So I think maybe there's a fine balance between maybe do give yourself some deadlines without destroying the creative process. Because I understand that just because I schedule time to write music today doesn't mean that great music's going to come out, So
Right.
we all get that. Dude, it will take me days to write lyrics for a song, where other times I can crank it out like in 30 minutes. And I don't know how much control that we have over that. Maybe more than we think. Go with a steady pace, but also allow the creative process to do its thing as well, and understand it doesn't have to be done right now. I think it is a good idea to give ourselves certain deadlines and schedule things out to where, okay, this is what I'm focused on.
100%. And I hope that my message was not to say that you can just relax about everything. I think that not beat yourself up if something's taking a long time.
Yes.
Sometimes things just need to take a little bit longer than other things. Yes, if you want to continue to do, music or anything that's in the arts, time is relative. If you are in the middle of, creating your first album, then you should just take the necessary time in order to make the right album for yourself. Because you know what? If it's your first album, you don't have an audience that's begging you for this content. So just make it right, take a little bit more time to make it right. Don't put yourself in a predicament where you just want it out there and not necessarily the thing that you wanted to put, and there's a truth to it too, of, just do it and just move forward. But your intention is to create something, and if you don't know what it is and you need to just experiment, then do that. But just do it in a way that you could live with yourself. Look, when I made my first Homeric album, I had no idea that it was cinematic metal. I had no idea. I just experimented. I created a lot of music, and I called it in the beginning symphonic progressive death metal. That's what I called it.
Yeah, which is cool, man. Which is really cool. I mean, and
it's cool. Right. Also, didn't really understand at that time what I was really creating. So, sometimes you do need to go through the process, then find out this is where it takes you. That's another truth to it too. There's a lot of truths to all of this. What's important is whether or not you feel best represents you now. Because in the future, whatever it is that you decide to put out, it's always going to be using that as a reference. And you have to also be aware that your followers are going to expect a certain thing. So when you decide that you're going to get, onto your second, your third, your fourth, There's going to be already some frame of reference for somebody. You're going to have to either step it up, you're going to have to either, make more, you're going to have to develop it somehow. It's a tough thing to really crack. It's not something that there's like a cheat code for. It's just you working at it. It's a tough thing to really crack. It's not something that there's like a cheat code for. It's just you working at it and enjoying the process as it goes along. Don't let the short-term frustrations demotivate you to stop. You just got to muscle through it, man. And it's okay. Sometimes it can be a little hard, but don't worry about it. It'll, the pain will pass.
It will pass. I think we did figure out a cheat code for that. Down, A, B, left, right, something like that. Oh, the days of old school Nintendo, man. I spent a lot of times with that. There's this real cool game, by the way, not to get off track, but it was called Ultima 4. It was a role-playing game. But yeah, you mentioned the journey, guys, and you must, okay, this is a command from Ken and I, like part of the whatever however commandments we have for Metal Mastermind. Well, this is a command. You must enjoy the journey, guys. Embrace the journey, even the hiccups, man. If you learn to even embrace the hiccups, I've learned so much about myself, especially this year. One of the things, like I don't get frustrated in traffic anymore. I chose not to. It's a decision you make, right? You can choose, because when we get frustrated, we're living in that past moment, right? Rather, I choose to enjoy the journey along the way. So if I'm stuck in traffic, maybe I look off to the side and I see something unique. Maybe there's a bunny rabbit over there. We saw some bunnies the other day. It's just weird stuff, guys. Even the painful parts. Sometimes you can laugh at yourself. You can joke about it. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more serious about things, depending on what it is. But allow yourself to be frustrated, but maybe just for a few seconds, and you just go back to, this is part of the journey. And I love what I'm doing. I love what I'm pursuing, and I'm going to enjoy the ride.
Beautifully said, man. So, Jason, what's your metal song of the week today?
Dude, it is. I'm looking it up on my phone right now. I sent this to you this morning when I was in the gym. Song by a band called Deceased, and it's called The Kept, K-E-P-T, The Kept by Deceased, and that was from their 2005 album As the Weird Travel On. The recording of this album was kind of, I don't want to say raw, not in a sense that they're not tight, they're tight, but it kind of reminded me of Slayer type stuff, but this is more, more death metal. But just kind of, it had that raw energy to it, if that makes sense, man. It wasn't like overproduced, and I know we probably overuse that word these days. It's really kind of some classic death metal, if there's such a thing. And I don't know, man, there's a vibe to it that I really love. I'm like, you know what? This is the song of the week. This is it. So yeah, The Kept by the band called Deceased.
Ooh. My choice was Warman. Warman is a band that I think was an offshoot from Children of Bodom. I think it's the keyboardist player's band. And there's this cool song on the album called Accept the Fate, The Return of Salieri. I like that one a lot. It's got a little bit of a neoclassical type of vibe, and I'm into all that Baroque stuff. So Salieri was actually a classical composer, which is pretty cool. So
cool. That's awesome, dude. Well, guys, that wraps it up for another episode of Metal Mastermind. Thank you so much for being a part of this awesome musician community that we've all created here. And we really hope you got something out of today's podcast. I mean, all of our podcasts, but, we kind of went into some heartfelt stuff. Hey, speaking of Metal Mastermind and your skills and really growing your confidence, do check out our courses. We have the guitar courses. Ken has a theory course. We've got vocal courses. We've got a whole library of online courses you can take at metalmastermind.com. So do check those out, guys. And until next time, as always, create your own sound.